The Prince Islands, alternatively written as Prince's Islands, in which the princes are plural, or Kızıl Adalar in Turkish, officially just Adalar, are an archipelago off the coast of Istanbul, Turkey, in the Sea of Marmara. The islands constitute the Adalar district of Istanbul province. The mayor of the Adalar district is Atilla Aytik. They consist of 4 larger islands: Büyükada with an area of 5.46 square kilometers, Heybeliada with an area of 2.4 square kilometers, Burgazada with an area of 1.5 square kilometers, Kyneliada with an area of 1.3 square kilometers, and 5 much smaller ones, Sedefadasi with an area of 0.157 square kilometers, Yassiada with an area of 0.05 square kilometers, Sivriada with an area of 0.05 square kilometers, Kashikadasi with an area of 0.006 square kilometers, and Tavsanadasi with an area of 0.004 square kilometers. Tourism and transport. During the summer months, the Prince's Islands are popular destinations for day trips from Istanbul. As there is no traffic on the islands, the only transport being horse and cart, they are incredibly peaceful compared with the city of Istanbul. They are just a short ferry ride from Istanbul, with ferries departing from Bostansi, Kartal and Maltepe on the Asian side, and from Kabatays on the European side. Most ferries call in turn at the 4 largest of the 9 islands: Kyneliada, Burgazada, Heybeliada and finally Büyükada. Ferry and ship services are provided by 6 different companies. In spring and autumn the islands are quieter and more pleasant, although the sea can be rough in spring, autumn and winter, and the islands are sometimes cut off from the outside world when the ferry services are cancelled due to storms and high waves. During winter, with the addition of the biting cold and the strong winds and the resulting ferry cancellations, the islands become almost deserted. As for cultural tourism, Büyükada happens to have the first and only city museum in Istanbul, the Museum of the Prince's Islands in Ayia Nikola Bay. History. During the Byzantine period, princes and other royalty were exiled on the islands, and later members of the Ottoman Sultan's family were exiled there too, giving the islands their present name. They were taken by the Ottoman fleet during the siege of Constantinople in 1453. During the 19th century, the islands became a popular resort for Istanbul's wealthy and Victorian-era cottages and houses are still preserved on the largest of the Prince's Islands. In 1912 on the islands lived 10,250 Greeks and 670 Turks. The islands have become more and more ethnically Turkish in character due to the influx of wealthy Turkish jet-setters, a process which began in the first days of the Turkish Republic when the British Yacht Club on Büyükada was appropriated as Anadolu Kulübü for Turkish parliamentarians to enjoy Istanbul in the summer. The islands are an interesting anomaly because they allow for a very rare, albeit incomplete, insight into a multicultural society in modern Turkey, possibly akin to the multicultural society that once existed during the Ottoman Empire in places such as nearby Istanbul, Constantinople. Prior to the 1950s, each of the inhabited islands had significant communities of ethnic minorities of Turkey, which is now the case to a much smaller extent. Since the vast majority of the residents and visitors are Turkish, today their legacy is of cultural rather than demographic importance. Notable residents. Many Turks fondly remember the islands as home to famous short story writer Sait Faik Abasyani and football legend Lefter Kukuk and Aniadis. After Leon Trotsky was deported from the Soviet Union in February 1929, his first residing place in exile was a house in Büyükada, the largest of the Prince's Islands, where Trotsky lived for 4 years between 1929 and 1933. Famous poet Nazim Hikmet attended the Naval Cadet School in Heybeliada between 1913 and 1918. Currently, one of Turkey's most famous writers and philosopher Gökhan Kundayoglu lives on the island. Büyükada Büyükada is the largest of the 9 islands comprising the Prince's Islands in the Marmara Sea, close to Istanbul. As on the other islands, motorized vehicles, except service vehicles, are forbidden. So visitors explore the island by foot, by riding a bicycle, or in horse-drawn phaeton carriages which function like taxi cabs, also offering, round the island, sightseeing tours. A convent on Büyükada was the place of exile for the Byzantine empresses Irene, Euphrosyne, Theophane, Zoe and Anna Damascena. After his deportation from the Soviet Union in February 1929, Leon Trotsky also stayed for 4 years on Büyükada, his first station in exile. Princess Farol Nisazaide was born on the island. There are several historical buildings on Büyükada, such as the Iyorgi Church and monastery dating back to the 6th century, the Ayos Demetrios Church, and the Hamidiyya Mosque built by Abdul Hamid II. Büyükada consists of 2 peaks. The one nearest the Iskele, Ristis, is topped by the former Greek orphanage, a huge wooden building now in decay. In the valley between the 2 hills sit the church and monastery of Ayos Nikolaos and a former fairground called Luna Park. Visitors can take the small tour of the island by buggy, leading to this point, from where it is an easy climb to Iyorgi, a tiny church with a cafe on the grounds serving wine, chips and sausage sandwiches, this being part of the classic Iyorgi experience. Heybeliada is the second largest of the Prince's Islands in the Sea of Marmara. It is a neighborhood in the Adalı district of Istanbul. The large naval cadet school overlooks the jetty to the left as you get off the ferry. There are 2 interesting pieces of architecture on the grounds of the school. One is Cumhuriyet, the only remaining Byzantine church on the island, and more importantly the last church to be built before the conquest of Constantinople. The other is the grave of the second English ambassador to be sent to Constantinople by Elizabeth I of England, Edward Barton, who chose to live on Heybeli to escape the bustle of the city. To the right of the jetty lies the town with its bars and cafes, a hotel that stays open all year round, and many lovely wooden houses. At the top of the central mountain is an 11th-century Greek Orthodox monastery. It housed the Halki Seminary, the main Greek Orthodox seminary in Turkey and theological seminary of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. The monastery attracts tourists from all over Greece and Turkey. To prevent the island from becoming polluted, the only motorized vehicles permitted on the island are service vehicles such as ambulances, fire trucks, police cars, and the like. The only forms of transport are by foot, horse and buggy and service transport. There is no airport. The only way of getting there is by boat. The winter population of the island is around 3,000, but in the summer, the owners of the summer houses return and the population swells to 10,000. The main summer attractions are small-scale open-air concerts sponsored by the local council, a swimming and fitness club next to the sea, and an annual Independence Day March, which is commemorated by a resident naval band touring the island. Burgazada is the 3rd largest of the islands, a single hill 2 kilometers across. Demetrius I of Macedon, one of the Diadochi of Alexander the Great, built a fort here and named it after his father Antigonus I Monophthalmus. The island took this name, but today is generally known by the Turks simply as Burgaz. In 2003 Burgaz suffered a forest fire, losing 4 square kilometers of woodland. Burgaz is a common setting and even a major theme for writer Sait Faik Abasayanik, where he also resided. Today, his residence is kept as a museum. At his favorite restaurant in Kalpazankaya one will also find his bronze statue enjoying the view with a glass of raki freshly filled every day by the restaurant owners. Kaynaliada is the nearest island to the European and Asian side of Istanbul, about 12 kilometers to the south. This is one of the least forested islands, and the land has a reddish color from the iron and copper that has been mined here. This was the island most used as a place of exile in Byzantine times. In modern times, Kaynarca residents have been predominantly Armenian, giving it the highest density of Armenians living anywhere in Istanbul, albeit mainly in summer homes. During the summer, approximately 90% of the population on the island is Armenian. The islands are reachable by ferry services that depart from Kabates on the European side. The voyage takes about 25 minutes by fast ferry and 40 minutes by regular ferry. Sadef Island. Sadef Island is one of the smallest islands of the archipelago, and has 108 private homes. The section that's open to the general public largely consists of a beach hamlet. The island is mostly private property, and the current pine forests were largely planted by its owner Sasuva Menementsioglu, who purchased the island in 1956 and also played an important role in the imposition of a strict building code to make sure that the island's nature and environment will be protected. He has forbidden the building of structures with more than 2 floors. In 857 AD, Patriarch Ignatios of Constantinople was exiled to the island and imprisoned for 10 years before being re-elected as Patriarch in 867 AD. Yasiada. Yasiada was used by the Byzantines for sending prominent figures into exile. One such person was the Armenian Patriarch Narses, who was first sent to this island before being imprisoned at Buyukada in the 4th century AD. In the 11th century AD, the Byzantines used the island for political prisoners. The remains of the 4 underground prison cells from this period can still be seen. The Byzantines also built a monastery and church on the island. Yasiada was captured by the Latin Crusaders during the Fourth Crusade in 1204. In 1857, Yasiada was purchased by the British ambassador Henry Bulwer, brother of novelist Edward Bulwer-Lytton, who built himself a mansion and a number of other structures to live undisturbed on this distant island. Henry Bulwer also organized agricultural production on the island to self-sustain his little realm, at least to a certain degree, but later sold Yasiada to the Khedive of Ottoman Egypt and Sudan, Ismail Pasha, who, however, didn't construct any new buildings and completely neglected the island. With the establishment of the Republic of Turkey in 1923, the island became a property of the Turkish state, and in 1947 Yasiada was handed over to the Turkish Navy, which built several school buildings. Between 1960 and 1961, these school buildings became the venue for the trials of the members of the former ruling party, Democrat Party. After the military coup of 1960, several of the defendants were sentenced to death, and 3 of these, including the former Prime Minister Adnan Menderes, were taken to Imrali Island and executed in 1961. After the end of the trials, Yasiada was given back to the Turkish Navy, and lessons continued to take place at the naval school buildings until 1978. In 1993, the island became the property of Istanbul University's Department of Marine Life and Sea Products, which used it for lessons and research. However, the strong winds on the island made life difficult for the students, and eventually classes were held elsewhere. Today, the island is a favorite location for scuba diving schools like Balıkadam Turkey Air as well as amateur divers. Sivriada. Sivriada currently is deserted. The island was often used by the Byzantine clerics as a distant place for peaceful worship, and by the Byzantine emperors as a convenient prison to detain prominent people whom they deemed troublesome. The first famous person to be imprisoned on the island by the order of Emperor Nicephorus I was Plato of Sacaudian, the uncle of renowned cleric Theodorus Strudites, for supporting his nephew in his conflict with the emperor. Other famous people who stayed in the island for religious and political reasons were Gebin, Basil Skleros, Nicephorus's Patriarch John of Constantinople and Patriarch Michael II of Constantinople. The graves of those who died in the island during the Byzantine period can still be seen today. The ruins of a Roman settlement and a 9th-century Byzantine monastery can still be seen on the shore, close to the fisherman's shelter, a small wharf which is often used by yachts. The most important buildings on the island were built in the 9th century AD, including a church, a chapel dedicated to religious martyrs, a monastery on the eastern end, and a cistern in the center of the island. In 1911, the mayor of Istanbul ordered the stray dogs in the streets to be gathered and deposited on Savriada. But a severe earthquake which immediately followed the event was perceived as a punishment by God for abandoning the dogs, and they were transported back to the city. Kashik Island. Kashik Island is located between the islands of Burgazada and Heybeliada. Kashik Adası is officially administered by the Burgazada neighborhood in the Adala district of Istanbul. It is the second smallest of the Prince's Islands, with an area of 0.006 square kilometers. Tavsan Island. Tavsan Adası is the smallest of the Prince's Islands, with an area of 0.004 square kilometers.